I am with David Germain. Sorry, man. You probably get that a lot. Welcome to another comic, another podcast. My name is John Corelli, where we try to interview. This is brand new, by the way. You are the second guest.
Right. First one was Movida, right?
Movida, and I'm still working on the editing portion of that because I'm brand new at this thing. I wish I could tell you guys, I wish this was a visual medium so I could tell you guys the rainbow that's in front of me. That is David Germain's equipment. It looks like a madman put together a sound studio. It's amazing. There's microphones and headphones, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, Roadcaster really knew what they were doing. They were like, all right, it's mad scientist time. Like,
seriously, I can see you in a lab coat, man. But so the format of my podcast is we get local comics. David Germain's been doing it a long time, and we, just... we have like a homework assignment where we both watch the same. I'm trying for recent stuff, but I'll ask you about your some of your favorites. But yeah, this week thank you. This week our special was Patton Oswalt's "I Love Everything." I literally just got done watching it. I'm rewatching it, I should say. So, you want to start with impressions?
So I was when you were texting me about this, I thought it was a great concept for the podcast. So thanks for having me on.
Love having you.
I appreciate it. Not too many people ever ask me to be on their podcast. So I have 292 episodes. 292 episodes that I've done. The Disjointed Podcast, and I think maybe 4 or 5 people have asked me to be on their podcast.
Ridiculous.
You know, I'm happy I got the 292. I'm excited, but Jacob Hamill is getting tired of me asking him to be on the show all the time.
Funny.
It's like, dude, there's only so angry I can get. Come on. All right. Jeez.
Jake will be on this podcast soon. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. So when you were talking about the concept, I'm like, all right, how am I gonna talk about this without sounding like a total egotistical shithead?
It's really funny because Movida said the exact same thing. I said, well, we haven't, I think you have to be a fan first before you even try this. And so I just thought, hey, we're not experts, but we know more than the average person.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was like, hey, we don't have to break it down, but we can at least, or we can break it down. I don't think it has to be broken down a lot. I just say, hey, these are our opinions, and this is why we think this is good, or we think this is bad. And
Well, I know, and anybody who listens to my show can take a shot now because I'm going to mention AMDA, the school that I went to, that because you learn theater. Or that's what I studied there. So, like, when it comes to really, like, watching, getting things really, really, into the minutia of things. So I'm like, all right, on top of that, actors have a tendency to rip everything apart.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, that's great that you can, find holes in anything, but what can you really build up? What did you really see?
Exactly.
So it's kind of like I'm like, I don't want to only do half the work. Now, I will say, like, okay, I think there's the performance. That's one thing to be graded upon. I think, the execution of like the difficulty of what they're trying to do. So some people are really good at painting visual pictures. Like Patton Oswalt was great in putting up these metaphors that didn't quite make sense, but they were hilarious.
Yes. And
like yeah. Can we are we trying to be clean on this?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay, because I've already said fuck at least once.
No, we're adults,
but one of the favorite ones that he had, he's like, this thing would be gayer than 8 guys going down on 9 guys. And so he would use the things that didn't quite make any sense. And I love that about, so I would say there's like I said, there's performance, there's execution. Bill Burr's another one. That helicopter bit was like one of my favorite bits of all time.
It's a great, the physicality of that bit. Along just the story is crazy.
Yeah, he does the same joke twice, but from 2 different angles, and they're funnier on both times. So like,
it's an amazing bit.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, okay, so there's that, and then there's the content of the bit. I mean, the actual content, like how difficult, like what's the difficulty rating on that? Was it personal stuff that they're trying to talk about? Is it just standard? Like, there's a difference between, and I'm not shitting on one of them, but let's say 1990s Jerry Seinfeld stand-up versus, let's say, Brian Callen stuff that he does today.
Yes.
Now Seinfeld's funnier, by the way, guys. I'll give him that. But Brian Callen does something that's completely different. He's usually trying to talk about, while he's being silly and goofy, he's talking about like masculinity and all these other things and all the funny and serious and silly, stupid things about it.
Right.
And he's like him, I would say he's a very theatrical, because he's a trained actor, but if you look at his physicality, how he does everything, like if you're a pretentious actor nerd like me, you're like, oh, he's using Barthelme's technique. Look at his breathing, how he's changing this. Nice. He's doing that. Okay, look at that. Oh, wow, that's amazing what he just did there. So I think I'm like I should probably stop there before I go any further and like basically just keep making different categories of the same thing. But I liked this special more so than the last one. I think the last one was more of a one-man show, but that was also his wife had been dead about a year or so.
Yeah, that was a difficult show.
That one was, I mean, it was really heart-wrenching, and like I thought it was very brave of him. But yeah, I didn't laugh as much when he was talking about how to explain to his daughter that his wife is dead.
Yeah,
and so it was like that was
he somehow did make it funny on a level, but it was you obviously had to have the sympathy with him to get that, and that was tough to ingest.
Like he had the whole bit afterwards, it's like little girl, oh no, little girl, and he found kind of a way to like, oh, because I mean in his mind he's like this is that one little gem that I'm going to find a way to make something find something funny about it. But this one, like I said, I enjoyed it more, and there was more of his. You could tell he went back to and did more like I could tell he did more mics with this one.
He even mentioned that near the end of the set. Yeah,
yeah, because I saw a lot of the I won't say old or typical, but the signature type Patton Oswalt style.
Definitely.
That he would put to old, from his older jokes and stuff and put up, and it was just really funny. And then, but I will say, like, if there was anything I was going to knock at it, the stories that he's actually talking about really don't fucking matter and aren't that interesting to me.
Okay.
So, like, the whole story, like the thing about his, this is a weird thing when I hear other comics say this, by the way, guys, and Patton, if there's no way you're ever listening to this, but if you do, just know that you were one of the first comedians I ever saw perform professionally.
Nice.
When I first started comedy at an open mic at Tempe, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he came in after a show at the Improv and did a set.
That's awesome.
And it was the first time, like, I had only been about 5 or 6 mics at that point.
Wow.
And then you see Patton Oswalt just completely crushed, and you're like, wow, that's professional. So he is one of my comedy heroes. But, like, when I hear comics like, yeah, I was having a fight, like, with my wife, like, that's just one of those things you do. And I'm like, no, it isn't.
I
like,
thought that too.
Yeah,
I was like, I really didn't fight with my wife much at all. We still got divorced.
Yeah, it was just polite, hey, I was thinking about going some milk and getting divorced. Yeah, that sounds good. Ooh, get peanut butter too.
Yeah, exactly. Don't forget the butter. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was just one of those weird things where I'm like, I think after watching that special, I really hope. I understand why he does a lot of TV because he's got not just bills to pay, but he's got a daughter to look after,
right,
a family and stuff. But I'm like, man, I really, really miss like I don't think he was done evolving. I think he's still going to make another special. I think is once that kid is like off in a high school or college or something, he's going to delve back into it because I don't think all the film and TV that he's doing. I'm like, there's really he's there.
Yeah,
but
it's not what he's best at. I mean, he's obviously good. I love him on MST3K.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying him on that. Ratatouille, although that's a long time ago at this point.
Oh,
it was great when he.
Did you ever see Dimension 303?
No.
Oh no, wait, Dimension 404. I think it was. Okay. Hey, what do you know? It's.
What?
Okay, hold on one second.
That's all right. Do what you got to do. I'll fill dead air for a second. I'm going to mention my.
Oh, sure.
Just the beginning was great.
Yeah.
I loved how he said, I've turned 50. And then he mentioned the cereals and the huge differences between the cereals when you're a kid or even under 40. Colorful boxes, popping names, and then goes to the 50-year-old cereals.
Yeah.
And it's just a white box. He's like, and I just love this line. He says, and the cereal is brown, and it's not brown like chocolate or brown like coffee. It's brown like dirt as you head toward the grave that's going to line your grave, basically. I was like, that's a great line.
Yeah, because I noticed, I'm 44, and I notice when I get cereal now, I'm like, oh, man, at what point, I buy Crunch Berries just because I rarely ever buy cereal.
Yeah.
And then, my wife and I destroyed that cereal or Rice Krispies, and then we're like, we should probably get some more adult cereal. This is, I don't, I can buy any cereal that I want now. And I remember being a kid, can we get Cookie Crisp? And my mom would be like, no, it's only cookies. I'm not going to buy you just a bunch of cookies for breakfast, okay? Gee. So, but, oh, sorry. Going back to that's.
Oh no.
My day job, guys, is I'm the head of a catering department, and one of my clients is like texting me. I'm like, hey, you know those 175 sandwiches that I asked you to make? Can you put those towards like 11:30 instead of 11:30 to 12? And I'm like,
that's a lot of sandwiches.
It's a lot of sandwiches. That's one of the thanks, COVID. I appreciate. You know what? No, because that's what a lot of other people aren't willing to do. This is a colossal pain in the ass, but. I remember something that one of my old bosses, Mr. Nick, the tyrant.
Oh, I love the stories about Mr. Nick.
Oh, Mr. Nick, because he always says the first thing you need to do is look what everybody else want to do, and that's where you start.
Now, Mr. Nick, just so you guys know, you should probably tell him to me. He's a Greek restaurant owner in New York. Right? Yes,
I know. Can you imagine that? A Greek guy running a restaurant? That's weird.
Crazy.
I can't ever believe that. I could have just said a restaurant owner. It should be inferred that he is at least somewhat Greek if I said New York City. So, and Mr. Nick, let's put it this way. It's been over 30 years since I've worked for this guy. I'm still afraid of this dude.
He might not be alive anymore.
He might not be, but he's like 6'4", 6'5".
Oh, wow.
He was on Big Nick, Mr. Nick or Big Nick in the Upper West Side. And so he was like 400 pounds. He was big dude, right?
I usually picture Greeks as tiny people. I know they're not all the same size.
Right, exactly.
I don't picture the Greeks as big people, just like being right across the sea from them. My people, the Sicilians, are all short. So I figure all the Greeks should be short, but they're definitely not. They're
like, we got Spartan blood. Hey, look at this. That one town, right? We still fuck everyone up. You know, so yeah, it was weird because this guy was insane. He was the meanest dude ever, but he was a genius at how he ran his business because I don't know anybody that could scream at his employees, his customers, the city officials, everybody. Everybody got yelled at. If you got in his way about anything or tried to tell him how to run his business, oh my gosh, he would just explode. But I stayed out of a morbid curiosity because he liked me, but he would still yell at me and everybody else, you know. And he's like, I told you need to do this. And I'm like, why don't you do this? How come I got to walk it? How come I have to hold your hand? You're an adult. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Mr. Nick. Don't tell me you're sorry. Just get it right.
It is amazing, those people. Were you a teenager or were you in your 20s?
No, I was in like mid-20s.
Okay, yeah. Those people still scar you.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was he was really amazing by it. But oh my gosh, how did we get on Mr. Nick? It was a restaurant.
Well, we were talking about, I don't know how we got there.
I don't know. I mentioned something.
This is going to be stream of consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's go back. Well, we're going to stop at that road and circle back. So, I thought that this was a good step for Patton Oswalt getting back towards stand-up, and I think it's a great way to because he's not going to be like Patton Oswalt stuff before he got married, before he had a kid. It was about, I was trapping mushrooms, and then now I got laid, and then I had to do this, and got to get a pill to kill a baby, you know. And he would do all these crazy kind of single guy stuff, and then you know, along the line, became a happily married father, and then tragedy struck, and I'm like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this. His wife died of cancer. She was this 2 or 3 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
And that. You know, obviously, what a blow. The daughter was, I think, 5 or 6 at the time.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was like she took the wrong kind of medicine, or it was ephedrine or something, or like that. I thought it came out of the blue.
Oh, maybe it did. I thought I could have sworn it was cancer. I thought he mentioned it, but I could be wrong about it.
Good, yeah, I could totally be wrong about it. So I don't know either.
But that was rough. It was like 4 years ago because I think his daughter was 6, and am I okay on the mic?
No, you're better. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just these things are so weird. Like if I turn away a little bit,
they're sensitive. I love it.
Right?
It's good equipment.
It's like my ex, right? They're so sensitive. Look at this shit. Yeah.
I say these things on Facebook and they act like they care. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
But that was just a horrible thing to happen. Here you are in your mid to late 40s, and your wife just drops dead. You've got a 6-year-old daughter. You're on your own. Boom. He was recovered 4 years later. He's with he got remarried. He says at the beginning of the special, which I had kind of forgotten about. That's why I got to rewatch these things.
Yeah, that was always weird. And like, by the way, I know nothing about that guy's relationships. But part of me, when I hear somebody gets remarried really quick, I'm like,
I know what did you need, buddy? Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, let's see. I know because one of the things that separates Corelli and myself from most of the Denver comedy scene is that we've both been through a divorce, and a lot of these little fuckers haven't.
All right? Very good point. Yeah.
So a lot of these guys are like, you have to be more sensitive to women. I'm like, wait till you go through a divorce.
Yeah.
And then tell me exactly how much you give a shit about what anybody else thinks. If you still can, you still will, hopefully, because you're a good person, but it's way more difficult to do that than you think it's going to be. It could be done, and I did it.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was where like you'll get to this point where like I don't give a shit about anything anymore.
Man, you don't. I mean, and they do. It's almost like the wedding singer after he breaks up with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
You go through that mode, and you don't think you're going to go through that mode, and you also don't think like we had a really good thing, and I just screwed it up. I'm not going to go into details about that, but I screwed it up. And then I went to my lawyer friend. I said, "What do you think's going to happen?" I go, "I don't think she's going to. I think it's going to go smoothly." He's like, "Dude, pound of flesh." It's like. It doesn't matter how good it was. It doesn't matter where you're at now. Pound of flesh, every woman does. And I was like, okay. And he was right. And, luckily I was reasonable, ate shit for a couple of years. And here we are, almost 10 years or 8 years later. And we're in good shape.
Yeah. See, my ex, I still haven't spoken to her. And and for the most part, it was fairly amicable. The problem is that she married down. So like... She was like, well, I don't think we need to worry about alimony. I'm like, yeah, I don't want any.
Nice.
I'm like, what? You make more than I do, and I have to come to a certain style of living. And then, well, the thing was, it was weird. The weirdest thing was like we had a condo. We were trying to sell it. This is 2008, right before the crash.
Oh, Jesus.
And we couldn't sell it because there wasn't a whole lot of condos in our part of town, except somebody bought these old apartment complexes and was trying to sell each one of those small little apartments for like $100,000. None of them went, so they decided to drop them down to 35. So guess what?
35 from 100?
Yeah. So
Jesus.
that means that my condo no longer was worth $100,000. It was now worth 35.
Oh, that's crazy.
So either way, there was all these things where we're like, fuck, this is really horrible. And I'm like, I got to move out because I was sleeping on a recliner. And I'm like, I get it. I fucked up too. I cheated on my wife constantly, by the way. So what was the one bit that I had where I was like, I thought I was a sex addict. I went to a doctor. It turns out I just really fucking hated my wife. So,
that was a good joke.
Oh, dude, I love it. It's so great. When I see, that is a mean joke, by the way, guys, but when I see men and women laugh at that, you can tell the voices are diverse.
It's solid.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, I totally get that. Yeah. So, like, we couldn't sell the house, and I'm like, we're gonna have to walk away from it. And she's like, well, I'm not walking away from it. I'm like, okay, well, I will sell you. I'll do a quick claim, and I'll sell you my half for $10. Here you go.
Nice.
Boom. So, and I had the bank actually notarize it too, which they're like, hilarious. Fuck you, man. I'm like, she's taking full responsibility. Like, well, you're still responsible. Not anymore. I'm not. Bye. Yeah. See you. Wow. So, I knew that thing was going to default anyways. So the thing is where she heard me was because I was still trying to be a decent stepdad.
Yeah.
And that's, all good intentions. Maybe was it selfish? Maybe, I don't know. But she made it so like I really couldn't see him anymore.
Oh.
And so I'm like, the last time I saw him, I gave him a hug and told him I loved him. And then, social media blocked, all this other stuff. So I'm Jesus. Like, I hope he does well, It's up to him. I'm his stepdad. He can live the rest of his life completely without me. If all things considered, it's his mom. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But that's where she took the pound of flesh. So at one point, like her mom's like, they're having a hard time making payments. I'm like, wow.
Sorry to hear
maybe
that.
Child support?
Yeah.
Well, she's not getting child support. I'm like, she should talk to that kid's dad then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I haven't said shit about, I put a roof over that kid's house for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Or put his roof over his head. For a couple of years. I never asked anything from that dude.
Yeah.
So... but the thing is, apparently that dude is a nice guy, by the way, but he has one talent, and that is knocking up girls. So,
oh God,
yeah, that was it.
how many? I
think he had 2 other kids.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good talent.
Yeah, it's pretty good talent. So
it's not of Maury Povichian proportions, but
right.
That's still we go 3 for 3. That's
it was up there. It was even like girls that didn't even like him too much. So was. I'm like, wow. All right, fair enough, man. Yep. This world is a crazy, twisted place.
It sure is. And I was just going to say, do you ever step back and just go, man, my life's pretty sane?
Well, mine's still insane, but I have looked back and, like, I remember because a lot of guys will have this, this one girl, the ex-girlfriend, she was a total bitch. She really broke my heart and stuff. And just as a writing exercise, I was thinking about every girl that broke my heart, and there was a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
But as I looked at every situation, I'm like, dude, all I did is try to be a good boyfriend to her. I mean, granted, she said she didn't want a relationship, but still, I was trying to be there for her. I called her. I was there to open up to her, even though she said she really didn't want a boyfriend. But the thing is, I was there for her, right?
Yeah.
When she needed me, even though she said Dave, I really don't want a boyfriend. I think we should stop seeing each other. And then, like, I'm like, you know what? No, she was right. She was right. That was, okay, what about this other? Oh, hey, actually, you know what? That girl was right, too. Holy shit. Okay, I was that dude who was good in bed but was emotionally unstable. And therefore, girls were like, listen, as soon as you get tired begging this dude, kick him to the curb. If you're smart, you won't even tell him your real name. You know, like... So I could look back, and I'm like, oh, no, I get it.
Now, is this New York, New Mexico, or?
No, this is mostly Arizona.
Oh,
Arizona is when I went into my full craziness.
Oh, okay.
So, but that was also where I started comedy and stuff, and like, you know, that's where I met Jenny. My wife, we've been together for, let's see, dating and married combined, I'd say about 8, almost 9 years.
Oh, that's good.
October,
Yeah,
you know.
that's good.
So, that means any type of advice I have on relationships, you should probably listen to that, all of my younger comedians out there, because I know how to do this better than you do. And I've got the track record to back it up on both sides of that. So
yeah, it's good to listen to divorce guys. We know some stuff, man.
Yeah, exactly. But like, dude, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah,
you just got to breathe. You know, it's. She's got to be pissed. She's got to, you know, like
we can tell them about some ins and outs of relationships. We can just go, hey, what's going on? You know, what's going on from both sides? I can maybe tell you, not necessarily exactly what she's thinking, but I can maybe tell you some reactions she might have based on my experience.
Yeah.
You know, I was married 15 and a half, and we lived together 3.5. We were together 19 years.
Yeah.
You know, 2 kids.
That was a good run.
I really wanted to get the 2-0.
Yeah. Like, come on, what's another 6 more months?
Exactly, we
like,
can make this.
It's like,
come
no,
on.
this is the reason why I'm doing it. Fuck you. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And
You're taking the 2-0 from me?
And to be honest, it's funny that I had to laugh when you said you cheated constantly.
Yeah.
I didn't cheat constantly. I cheated, though, and that was enough for her. She's like,
Yeah.
get the fuck out. And I was like, yeah, got a point.
Yeah. Well, no, I get it. It's not like I said there was anything I could do to justify it. There was never like, so this is how I always put it. Is, you know, like when you're a kid and you're playing with your friends and one of your friends breaks a window and then, you know, everybody gets in trouble and you try to tell your mom and your dad, but it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. And then your dad will ask you this question: should you have been there in the first place?
Oh, yeah. That's a rough one.
Were you supposed to be playing in that person's yard?
Exactly.
No,
Yep.
no. So you shouldn't have been there in the first place, and that's why this happened. So this is how I would look back. If I had a chance, like for 44-year-old Dave to talk to 30-year-old Dave, like, you should not get married.
Yeah.
Because what you think that you're going to get, you're not going to get. Who you think you're going to be, you're not going to be.
Yeah.
This is one of those things, like, you really shouldn't have been there. Like, and she's not a bad person. I don't think she's a bad person at all. But the thing is, that should have been a weekend hookup.
Yeah. How long were you guys together?
3 years. No, 3 to 5 years, I think, something like that. I was in there for 3 to 5.
I was just going to say, it sounded like a sentence.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was is there's how you think you're, like, when a relationship changes, you know, after you get married.
Yeah.
Or it can. That's why I always say I like being, I'm all for long engagements, guys. Yeah. And
I think that's why we lasted so long, was the 3.5 years getting to know each other.
Yeah, that did. And it's so weird. Like, I remember I got the part of Lieutenant Shrink in West Side Story, right?
Nice.
For Tempe Little Theater. I hadn't done a play in a long time, and it felt so good. It's kind
My
of like
favorite, by the way.
Oh,
I used to
yeah.
watch with my mom. It was like Wizard of Oz here on network TV.
Oh,
Showed
really?
every 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Every summer, every winter, like clockwork. That and the Wizard of Oz every 6 months. You know, the movie, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Not the play. That'd be kind of cool. I wish they had done the play. If they could have done the play on TV and we could see that, that'd be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, it was weird because I remember walking past that basketball court.
Oh, yeah.
Going to work almost every day when I lived in New York because I was on the Upper West Side.
That's awesome.
They're like, oh, wow, cool. So there was this one little, she didn't say it to me to be hurtful. But she was like, I'm so glad this play's over. You're so full of yourself when you're doing a play. It's not you. You know, like, that's just totally, that's not how you act. And if I was a strong enough person then, I would have said, actually, yes, I am that egotistical. That is exactly who I am when I'm performing, and I don't feel like I'm myself unless I'm performing. So that's, you know, like, this lockdown has been really tough, man.
Oh, man. We're going to hit, that's, if I do a lot of podcasts and we're still on lockdown, you're going to hear a lot of lamenting. I mean, Movita did it. Although she's gotten out a little more than I think we have.
Yeah.
But,
well, I've been on a show. I did Jacob Urban show up in Loveland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was good. Jacob Urban, for some reason, that guy keeps asking me to do his shows and stuff. So I'm like, all right.
Well, he knows you're funny.
He's a good guy. Like you put me on shows. Urban's put me on shows. Everybody else. I mean, some folks, like the last other person who gave me my feature set was John Toll.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Ugh.
No, this is the thing is, I like John.
I honestly, and I've never met him, so I can't judge him. I've just heard craziness.
Oh, okay. So John is a Christian conservative, yes. Which in a lot of people's eyes it means that he's evil and he likes to punch babies, but that is not him. He's one of the sweetest guys out there. He's got a heart of gold, but he believes things differently than a lot of other people do. He also spent a whole summer doing nothing but mushrooms and studying 13th century geometry. So when you're talking to him, sometimes it'll be confusing to try to figure out what the hell he's saying.
Yeah.
You know, he'll ask you, if you could be that which was, but is not is.
Oh, dear God.
Then could that not also be the underlining factor of what you might be feeling if and so for then you could, and it's like, dude, you got to stop.
It's like
break it down. You're trying to speak in prose.
I was gonna say it's like a verbal
or
Escher drawing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I can't.
Where are you going?
Geez, yeah. But yeah, I don't know what the whole story. But I mean, he was here for what, 6 months to a year, and then
he was crushing.
Yeah, he was doing it. I guess he was doing he was at Comedy Works like 6 times a month, and that went down to like a couple times a month, and then to once a month, and then nothing.
Well, I mean, so
I don't know what the story was at. I never asked him. So
do you think this? I mean, because most of the people on the scene are young. Most of them pretty liberal. Excuse me, I am very liberal, but I also have a different bent on what comedy is than a millennial. So I guess I would ask. Is it fair? I mean, would Comedy Works, for example, be as how do I want to put it? Would they be as stringent on a person's politics as, say, just another mic in town?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of things like I know a lot of folks in the. And I was coming at this from a slightly different angle because I was trained by professional showbiz people. Right, in New York. I did nothing with that education except, played Lieutenant Schrank in community theater and then started cheating on my wife when she said, I hate you when you're performing. And I'm like, oh, really? Then I'm going to set fire to this fucking relationship. Check that. Well, my subconscious did anyways, which that was great, where I'm like, how is it that I could say that I love this person, but I'm constantly doing these horrible things? And I'm like, well, that's funny. One of these days I'm going to be a comedian and I'll find a way to make this funny. But when... I know that there's more than one ways to be successful, and success is such a broad umbrella. Like being able to perform, like Gary Sinise for years did theater in Chicago before he was ever in any movies. He raised a family. That was successful.
He was with Steppenwolf, and he worked with Malkovich and somebody else pretty famous.
The Steppenwolf Theater Company has a lot of like heavy hitters in it. Yeah. So, Malkovich, Dennis Franz. Not Dennis Franz. What was it? Yeah, that big guy. He was on NYPD Blue. He was in there. There was a bunch of people that went through Steppenwolf, right? Okay. And those are the only ones that come to mind right now. But so there's that. But I figured out when, after about the second or third time that I did Comedy Works, I like taking big risks.
Yeah. Sometimes,
not all the time, because when you take the, making jokes about suicide, that's a big risk.
It's a tough one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very tough one. And that joke, the one joke that I had, it was never sharp enough, so I don't really do it anymore, and I haven't decided to go back to it. But, this was based on a true story. When I used to transport people with special needs, in Arizona, having a really racist kid who has special needs, I'm like, oh, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Because anybody who's ever worked with special needs, they're just like anybody else, only more so. Yeah. They're so upfront with their emotions and stuff like that. They're just beautiful, beautiful people. But not everybody is all super happy.
Yeah.
This one guy just freaking every single time, and he'd start talking shit about Mexicans, even though I am half Mexican. And I just had to just sit there and take it. I'm like, what am I going to... Let's put it this way: you can't punch every Nazi, guys. All right, no. There's certain ones. If you just some of these guys, they'll be like, "How hard you hit him?" But Sorry, that was fucked up. I made that was messed up.
That's pretty funny though.
But it was just one of those things. But then that led me to the thing I'm still working on about compassion and how difficult that is.
Right.
You know, it's easy to be compassionate about people you already care about. It's people that you hate.
Yes.
That's very, very, very difficult. But I think if we can get to that or work on that, I think that's a better exercise to do to evolve our humanity as opposed to just go backwards. But,
well, and especially right now, we really do need to. And I'm not good at it at all, at loving our enemy. I don't even want to call him my enemy, but man,
it's tough. Well, let me finish the comedy works thing
yeah.
before I move on, because that's such an even bigger topic. But I saw after about the third time that I was there, this is when Deacon, rest in peace, was still running the new talent thing.
Right.
And he said something. He's like, you got to give people a chance to like you before you could start going any being mean. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't give a fuck if people like me up there.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't.
Yeah.
I want them to be entertained.
Yeah,
That's
you
what I
want to make
want.
them laugh.
I don't give a shit if they like me, as long as they're funny, as long as they think as long as they're laughing. That's what I care about.
I've always felt the same way.
Right. And so at that point, I kind of noticed, I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to move up here.
No.
So I think because they were looking, I don't know, just because I don't think I was Deacon's cup of tea. He never said that you're a shitty comic or anything like that. But I'm like, I saw the other comics that they were putting on there, and it was different styles of comedy. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. So at that point, this was a couple of years ago, and I'm like, if I'm gonna do something with comedy, I'm gonna have to do this without Comedy Works.
Yes.
And I'm like, all right, that's totally possible. I'm like, I'm not shitting on them. You know, that's a great room. If every time I'll still sign up to do the new talent night whenever that opens up.
Yeah.
Which I'm really hoping that it does. But for the most part, there's a lot of folks who are like, oh, you don't want to piss off Comedy Works. I'm like, that's not how showbiz works.
Yeah.
You know what? I think if you could, like, asses and seats is really what it comes down to. The only time I saw that it wasn't is when and I think this was horrible that they even publicized this. I don't know if this was her or anybody else, when she decided she wasn't going to book Louis C.K.
Oh, Wendy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was, I mean, but it's her choice not to. It's her club. I'm getting that. But when you start seeing in papers and news articles and stuff, that's pretty like, hey, everybody, I stood up for this. Who was in Comedy Works in the next month?
Yeah.
Aziz.
Oh, geez. And T.J. Miller.
Yeah. So this is the whole thing. Is what it comes down to. Is it? Well, this is this is why I think the Denver comedy scene is dead, because I would not. There's a certain thing in show business, is what they teach you, and that is, for the most part, when it comes to inside show business, you keep your opinions to yourself.
Yeah.
Because you never know, the lighting person might be cousins with the sound person on the person you're talking shit about in the next set. Yeah. And guess what? They are producing a big thing, and they find out that you talk shit about. It's little things like that. It's very, very petty.
Yes.
Very petty. Like Brant Tobler, before I got off Facebook, Brant Tobler was like, guys, man, you're shitting on a lot of professional comedians here.
Yeah.
They're going to remember it.
I just saw that on Facebook. Like last week, right?
It was like a week or two ago, something like that. Yeah.
I saw that too, and I was just like, oh man, it's a lot of people. Some of the younger comics that don't get,
because they have their circle, and they're like, oh, that's fine. We control. Like, dude, none of you guys, nobody's living off of any type of money that you're making, as far as I know.
No, there are very few comics in Denver that are making a living at comedy.
Right. Well, especially not now. But I mean, even before that, I think there was like 3. Yeah. Right. And Sam Talent was one of them. Yeah. And then, because he went on the road a lot, and then I know there was a few others, but the whole thing is that, like, how do I put this? Because there's no way to talk about this without sounding like I'm trying to stand up for racist assholes. So, well, because I'm not, but I'm like, if somebody wants to be racist, that's their right to. If they want to, I think it's a horrible waste of human energy. I think it's not going to make you a better person. Right. But I can't control somebody's thoughts, and the only thing I could do is try to be patient, or I could just not even talk to them. Right. One of the two. Those are pretty much it. But nothing I can do or say is going to stop them. They're going to have to experience that on their own. Yeah. I was very bigoted growing up because out of ignorance. Growing up in a small town, it took a lot of compassion from a lot of people in New York for me to come around, because of their love and because of their compassion. Right. They saw somebody in me. They just knew that I just kept putting my foot in my mouth, and I was just a dumb little redneck, right? So I'm like, okay, that's how I was taught. That's the way that I'm going to taught. Not everybody feels that way. Everybody's got social media. Right. Like, and this might be turned into a bit. so I'm going to apologize for trying to run this bit, but I want to get your thought about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so a lot of people like to shame people online and dunk on them or whatever.
Right.
Okay. There was a war, right? Which the unions won. Like shitload of people died, like bayoneted, blown apart, shot in the face, and
horrific stuff.
Yeah, there's still racism though.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't know why there still is. I mean, we won.
Yeah.
You think they would have got them? All right, you all got to stop being racist now. Like, no, that's not what happened. So, and there's going to be a better punchline to that. I just don't know what it is. But it's funny. Like, do you think your snarky comment is going to do more than what the Union Army did back in the 1700s?
600,000 dead people did.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, wait a second, and that kind of goes into. I know I'm talking all over John. This is exactly what I do on my podcast.
That's okay. That's what I think. That's what podcasts are. Honestly, as long as we're keeping it interesting, I hope it is. We'll see.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think social media and I've been telling this to a lot of people, and I think every person I throw this opinion out to, they might feel like I'm attacking them personally, and I'm not. But I'm looking at social media now the same way that I look at cigarettes. And alcohol. Yeah, it is your right to do them, but kids should not have it.
That's a good. Is that a bit yet?
Because no, that's just
a good
my
punchline for.
Oh, that's my that's just my self-righteous opinion. Is what that is. No, it's because I think it's dangerous. I think you and I had a very poorly worded thought that I put up a while back, and it was basically I was trying to convey the angry mobs that were tearing down statues, which I knew wasn't going to stop at Confederate statues. Yeah. Which it didn't, right. To people who alienate their family or something. It was a really, really poorly worded, poorly thought out thing. Yeah. And so you and I got in a conversation about it, and we talked about this the next day. Yeah. Right. And it was really weird. And I'm like, dude, I had to really keep reminding myself that John Corelli's your friend. And he is not trying to be an asshole to you. He's just talking to you. And it was really weird where...
Well, and I thought it was a good exchange of ideas. And then you had a third friend jumped in, a female. And she kind of took... I don't know if I passed her the baton but she kind of took the angry baton and kind of ran with it.
And then tried to beat me over the head with it. Oh, let me tell you what's more about that story. Yeah. So because I was going to a meeting, I had to do a wedding walkthrough. And I messaged her. I'm like, here's my phone number. I have to do a meeting, but if you would like to talk about this later, I'll be more than happy to. And then she responded like, no, I don't think I will. I don't think I need to have anybody in my life that has to white-splain how people feel and how completely oblivious to how other minorities' emotions and stuff are. Brother. And I'm like, okay. And then she said, then it was white-splaining and then mansplaining. And by the way, anybody who's listening to this, you don't have to be my friend, all right? But when I hear mansplaining or white-splaining and you're putting my gender, what I had no choice being born with, and the color of my skin, which I also had no choice of being born with, and using that as some type of original sin where I'm complete like, oh, no, we're done talking. It's the same way the kind of conversations I had growing up with Caucasian people when they were talking about Latinos, and they looked at them like they were lesser or anything because of where they were born. I'm like, I don't need to talk to that person, at least not right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not in a good space for it. So when she said this, and I'm like, okay, all right. I didn't respond to it. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not engaging in this because it's only going to get worse because I'm going to say something. I'm not above saying horrible shit.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, I'm not going to do this.
No. And I didn't mean it like that.
Oh, yeah, no.
I've never seen you do that on Facebook. I don't think you get it. At least I haven't seen you get into as much craziness as a lot of people do. I don't
because I have a hard time finding a middle ground. Yes. So some folks like to get really angry and they like being angry. Like if I'm get that angry with somebody, I'm stepping out of my house. I'm going to fucking find you. Like... No, we're going to have this conversation in person, and I'm going to make you accountable for everything that you said because I'm going to take responsibility for everything that I said. So we're going to be adults together.
Exactly,
yeah. So I didn't respond to her. The next day, she was like, okay, so you didn't respond, but you need to watch this video about what systemic racism and what you're doing, what you're doing with this. Now, this is a part I will admit that I was being very ignorant to. I did not know a lot of those Confederate statues were put up because I thought they were there for a couple hundred years. No, they were there during the Civil Rights Movement.
Exactly.
Right.
And I was like, and that's a good point that a lot of people, I needed that made to me. And I'm a history major, so I didn't even know.
So I understand why those were going down. But my point was, and I mentioned this to Armstrong, where I'm like, I get why people want a Confederate statue pulled down, but I don't want to support an angry mob because, and Armstrong thing is like the reason why you don't start a riot is because you can't stop one.
Right. You can't. I've seen that quote from him. You can't control a mob.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem right now is that the rioters are being equated to protesters, which isn't really fair. It's I've kind of said, hey, if there are only a few bad apples as cops, you have to say the same thing about the protesters,
right?
And so I've seen a lot of people go, just absolutely like one of our favorite people, I imagine too, Mudflap McGrew, early on, before there was barely even rioting going on in the George Floyd thing. Describe them as rioters, and then gets his base all riled up and going, oh, lock and load, all these people making these crazy comments about they better not try coming to the suburbs and blah, blah, blah. That's not happening. As far as the statues, you actually made me rethink my position, because I was at first like, yeah, tear them all down.
Right.
Even as an Italian-American Columbus, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I did think, I saw you and someone else and some stranger I didn't know, but she had a really good point. It's art. And so I posted, hey, maybe we take all those statues and bring them down to Stone Mountain in Georgia. Just make it one big Confederate memorial.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. Like I'm not a big fan of erasing parts of history.
Oh no,
because they remind us of the ugliest part of ourselves.
Yeah.
Like one of the reasons why I spoke about that joke about me cheating on my wife. Yeah. That is the absolute one of the worst parts about me that I never ever want to forget.
And
it's one of those things. I put it in a part of a joke, and I do it in a way that makes people laugh. But I'm like, I never want to forget that I can easily become that person.
That's
again.
a look in the mirror we all need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fact that I'm hoping that, and this might be getting a little too deep into it, that if they see somebody who's entertaining, who's constantly looking at himself in the mirror, they might give them a little bit more strength to look at themselves in the mirror, possibly.
Yeah. And that's, and I got to say, this is me going off on my favorite comic. We mentioned him earlier, or we alluded to Louis C.K. And I think he's still my favorite comic. He's not my favorite person, but that's what his magic was for me. And Bill Burr does to an extent too. Just makes people laugh while saying, "Hey, this is hilarious." He's showing you his weaknesses and his, his fallibilities.
Yeah, that's the fun part about doing comedy is we get to laugh. Like, it's kind of an extension of gallows humor, and like I've been doing morning pages, and I've been try to write 3 pages every morning and stuff, right? And sometimes I come up with thoughts that I really don't like, and sometimes it's like, oh, gee, sorry, that's interesting. But I was thinking about gallows humor. Yeah, and I was listening to one of Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast, the Blueprint for Armageddon. It's all about World War I. It's amazing. If you guys haven't checked it out, Dan, give me money. But one of the things they were talking about is that having to live in these trenches it's not like somebody came along and picked up all these dead bodies.
Exactly.
And it wasn't like you could just move them out, because if you stepped anywhere above the line, you were going to get obliterated in a hail of bullets. Yeah. Right. So, and you lived, you ate, and you shit all in these trenches for weeks at a time. Yeah. So, and you're under the constant threat of war. There's flies, there's all this other stuff. And then the winter comes, and they were talking about the soldiers that were, one of the trenches, because these artillery is coming up and all this earth is coming down, some people get buried alive. Yeah. And in this frozen trench, there was one man's hand that was stuck out, right? And that's where he died. And so a lot of these guys, when they walk by, they would shake the hand like, hey, how's it going, Ted? How's it going?
Wow.
How's it going, right? And you're like, wow, but they did that because they had to make something funny because they were in such a horrible place.
Yes.
So I think this is where the thought on the writing came in, is that if everybody there in that unit is living in that shit and they could find the humor in that, but then you take that humor, that story, to somebody who did not live in that, and they're like, that is fucking horrible. You guys should be ashamed of yourself. Oh my gosh, what kind of human being? And I'm like, oh, there's kind of a disconnect, because not everybody, that's when I was thinking, I'm like, if I'm going to do something that's dark, I got to find a way to make it more accessible so people know where I'm coming from. Like circling back to Patton Oswalt, he was really good at painting those pictures. Yes. Like Bill Burr's great at it. I know he's not like on the top of anybody's list as far as comedians, but I like the way his work has evolved. But Rogan's if you look at his last 4 podcast is specials.
Yeah. I love Triggered.
Oh, Triggered was great. Strange Times was
those
great.
are the two I've seen.
Yeah, if you go look, Rocky Mountain High was pretty good as well. That was one into Comedy Works.
Oh, nice.
And then the one before that, I think it was in Georgia, which is okay.
All right.
But if you watch those going back, I'm like, you see how much that guy's evolved.
Yes.
And how his storytelling and everything is becoming a lot smoother. But
it seems like a lot of these guys, they have kids that are they're. And there's the reason I love these guys. Mm-hmm. The Burrs, the CKs, the Stanhopes, the Rogans, the Oswalts. They're all right at my age. They're all right around 50. And they have kids that are close to kids my age. They it's just, relatability is so very important. Mm-hmm. And the more people you can relate to, I think the more successful you're going to be. You can still be dark. You can still have those crazy, like, inner guttural thoughts. Mm-hmm. But you can... you can get those out there and make it relatable to, I think, a huge audience if you're good at it. Like Louis C.K. was relatable to millennials and Xers and probably even boomers, just because these are the thoughts that, whether we want to think about them or not, are in our heads. They're floating around in there.
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask you, this is one of my things I like to ask on my podcast.
Sure.
Who would you put on your comedy Mount Rushmore?
Oh, I was thinking about that. So... so this guy Oswald would have been on there.
Nice.
I'm not sure. Right now. This is the one thing is his title is I Love Everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, some of us have read your Twitter feed, so you clearly don't. Yeah. So just want to, and that's what I think. There's a duality of people think that they're going to be one person online.
Oh yeah. And
then somebody else in real life. And when they see those things come together, then I'm like, ooh, it's going to be ugly.
And plus, when you know the dark side of his humor, that's definitely a tongue-in-cheek title for that.
Yeah.
For that special.
That's what I was thinking. And I was like, I love everything. Not really.
No, you don't.
Maybe you do. But no, I would still put him on there just because of his skill. Carlin was one of the first comedians that I heard. Because at first, my mom would let my brother check out comedy albums from the library.
Nice.
So, there's certain things my mom gave him a lot more leeway than she did me. So
older or younger?
Yeah, my brother Drew, he's 5 years older.
Okay.
So that, because that was from her first marriage and stuff. So I get that,
Yeah.
It's kind of rough that I had to be understanding about this when I was like,
It's hard, yeah. You're like a toddler or
exactly.
a 5-year-old, and you're like, why is she treating this 10-year-old better than me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, that's fine. I things worked out well for me. But the first one was that he brought home, I think it was Bob Newhart, The Button Down Mine.
Great one. I have it at home.
In homage to Bob Newhart.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing the Star Wars bit that I had?
I probably have. I don't know why I'm not thinking about it right now.
Well, either way, I'll tell you about it off air and stuff, but it's because I'm still working on it. But so there was him, right? And then the second one was Bill Cosby, which and this is going to be so hard for you for the younger folks, and I totally understand why. I'm not shitting on you about this, but up until 5 years ago,
he was the best ever.
He was the best ever. He was the master joke teller. He was the guy who broke through so many different boundaries of different comedy and stuff, and he was able to do just magical things with it. And you're like, wow, this is really cool, but it was also very clean. And then George Carlin, that was the first time I heard somebody say shit.
Yeah.
Some people say shoot, but I know what that is. That shoot is shit with 2 O's. And I just thought that was the most hilarious thing ever. And I'm like, whoa, you could be dirty and be really funny. And then, over the years. So I would say Carlin's one, Oswald's one.
Are you putting Cosby on there? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I have Cosby on mine. Because of what he did for comedy. It's hard. We may have to blast him off like they're talking about blasting guys off the real Mount Rushmore.
Dude, the thing is, I'll circle back to that. Because the whole thing around Mount Rushmore was kind of fucked to begin with, I guess, from what other people told me. But so it's definitely Oswald, definitely
Carlin.
I want to put Cosby, but I don't want to put him on there just yet. I would think I'll put Sam Kinison for his Louder Than Hell album.
Yeah.
On only for that album, because the other ones were not nearly as funny. And the reason for that being, I'm like, is he with Texas? Yes, he was.
He was horrific.
He was horrific. None of those things, but he made people laugh at the most horrible shit.
Exactly.
and he was unapologetically himself. Granted, he was probably of a concussion because he had when he was a kid. Doesn't matter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the things that him and Roseanne Barr kind of shared in common is they both had serious concussions when they were, or brain damage when they were young.
Oh, I had no idea about that.
So
wow.
apparently, Roseanne Barr, she was in a mental institution because after she got hit by a car, she couldn't do math anymore. There was all these other weird shit that was going on. Sam's brother said that he was a completely different person, a different kid before the accident and after the accident. So I'm like, there might be something to that. Let's see. Bill Burr's, I haven't seen The Paper Tiger or Walk Your Way Out, but at least not all the way through.
Those are a little rougher than the other three that I think you're getting back to.
Yeah.
I love all three of them.
Yeah.
What's the 2014 one? Sorry You Feel That Way.
Yeah.
And then, gosh, I can't think of titles right now.
The one that was in black and white, that wasn't the favorite one that I think that he did.
That was the Sorry I Feel You.
Yeah, sorry.
You Feel That
The
Way.
one before that when he still had hair, when he was talking about like the no reason to hit a woman bit.
Yeah, and These Great Men and the Schwarzenegger bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's an amazing bit.
The gold digging whore bit, or what was it?
Yeah.
There's just other things because he takes a subject that he will dig himself into a hole with, and then he'll work his way out.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Oh, really? Being a mom, that was a hard. I thought, being a redhead, working roofing in the middle of summer, I thought that was going to be hard, but no, you had to work the DVD."
Yeah, exactly. If you can do your job in pajamas, it's not that hard of a job.
Right.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where I'm kind of like, all right, it's that shit was pretty funny. So I'm going to put Burr on there. So we got Oswalt, Burr. There's two new guys. We got George Carlin. So I'm going to try to find another great besides Cos. Oh no, it's Sam Kinison. So I'd put those.
Oh,
four.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I would put those four.
That's
on
pretty
there.
good four. I'll tell you my four. Like I said, I got Cosby. I got Pryor because I was kind of raised on him. Like it's funny thinking about people like us listen to that stuff on vinyl. My dad, and I'm going to say the word because it's on the album cover. It's Bicentennial.
And it's your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It's Bicentennial Nigger. 1976. I'm 9 years old. I don't understand 90% of what's going on.
Right.
The few bits I could understand I thought were hilarious, and then my dad's laughing his ass off. But yeah, I was kind of raised on Carlin and Pryor because I think that everyone was.
Yeah, in the 70s, those guys were it.
Oh, they really were.
Yeah.
I mean, Cheech and Chong kind of snuck in too, but and there were probably a few other guys, but so for me, it's Cosby, Carlin, Pryor, and Lenny Bruce because of what they, those pioneers of comedy for me.
Did you seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
I've never watched. I'm supposed to. I know,
Okay.
I know I should,
So
but
I haven't got to the third season. The first season's really good.
Yeah.
The first season, every comic can appreciate. Obviously, some people try to debate if whether she was really existed or not. I don't know about that. I know that there was a couple things that like her husband leaves her and she goes down to this the place where he did stand-up comedy, and his idea of stand-up comedy was taking jokes or stealing jokes from other comedians because that's what they did. Vaudeville guys did that all the time.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. So he was doing that, and then he goes in the next night and he bombs and he feels horrible. And then admits that he's having an affair and stuff. And so she's like, what the fuck? And so she goes down there and she just is drunk and she gets arrested for being lewd or for lewdness. But she's crushing as she's up on the stage and she's being funny. Nice. So that's why Alex Borstein's character is like, you got to keep doing this. You got to keep doing this, And it's really, really cool to show us like how she bombs and then how she, and then they have a montage of her hitting up these different mics and stuff. And that part's really cool as a comedian. But when other folks are like, yeah, that's great. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of things that they're missing, though.
Oh, yeah.
But for the story's sake of storytelling, it's forgivable. Yeah. But then it's like season 2. It's like, so this girl crushes every single place that she goes to? Like, you guys understand that that's not how comedy works, right? No. Like, it's just grinding it out. But, no, that one's really good. But Lenny Bruce's character in it, and the guy who plays him is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So they really, obviously this is pre severe heroin addiction and all the other, all the horrible shit that happened to him. So he's still, the artist, Lenny Bruce, and going on TV and everything, and goes out and like, let me say something. All right. So what is it about, and it's just
that hipster, when hipsters were cool, not the modern day hipster that everyone hates.
Before the invention of upspeak.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's, I will say this, as much as I can't do comedy right now, I still love being a comedian. I still wouldn't trade that time for anything in the world. This is one of those things, like, obviously COVID is a very, very serious thing, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's like, aren't you worried about getting sick? I'm like, I did as many shows as I think I possibly could that were good. I learned a lot from it. I was doing what I wanted.
Yeah.
I was living life the way that I wanted to. So if everything ends tomorrow, I'm going to be very, very sad. But you know what? If there's a God who says, did you do the best you could? I'm going to be like, about 70-30. You know, like it's, which is more than I think a lot of other folks did. You know, I think there's a lot of folks like, well, I meant to, but, you know, I got involved in this Twitter beef and like this hashtag war, and I don't know. But
I think if you're doing over 50-50, you're honestly doing good.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think about that. I was like, I did my best. Did you?
No, and that should be a good question. I'm like, because if you didn't, that's like, fuck, okay, I could, what's a baby step I could take tomorrow?
Yeah. Like, I think about, I'm a good dad, but, did I do my best? No. How many Bronco games did I watch where I could have really been more interactive with my kids? I mean, we all need breaks, but
it's like, at what point I think, what if my kids said that they were gay? I didn't even listen for like 3 weeks.
I was like, hold on, Elway's got the ball.
Yeah, but it was like, this is playoffs, you little shit.
Exactly. I honestly think, did we really do our very best? None of us would watch TV. TV wouldn't exist if we had done our very best all the time. We can't. Gandhi even, did you hear about the Gandhi statue that came down? Because
that one was weird because you informed me about that. This was a good Facebook communication. When he was like, yeah, that was in, what was it, Senegal? Or
Ghana.
Ghana.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's like, why? Because he hated black people. Like, it was weird.
I had no idea. I mean, he used I'm not going to, I've already said it once tonight, so I won't. And it wasn't even the same. It's South African. It's just, it was a racial slur he used when he was in South Africa. And the guy that ran, I didn't know this either, the guy that was the dean of the university in Ghana, he was an Indian. And so he's like, oh, well, Gandhi's one of our best. We'll put him there. And that was it was just back in 2015. It wasn't even that long ago. And so when all these statues went down, the kids in Ghana are like, we're taking this down.
We got to put our finger on this a little bit and be like, So, okay, this is a weird thing is that if you listen to, I mentioned Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, the ones you could listen for free on the iTunes store, he has a series called Supernova in the East, right? And it's all about the Japanese Empire.
Oh, geez.
And leading up from how it switched from a feudal state up until the end of World War II. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting is when people, like, this is what I hate, when there's comics in town who are like, FDR was a racist, but he was a racist. I'm like, name one world leader from back then who wasn't.
Exactly, yeah.
Because Churchill, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's all about Britain. Everybody else can go suck a royal dick. Hitler, I'm pretty sure that guy was racist.
Last I checked.
Yeah, last I checked. Stalin, he wasn't a fan of anybody. He wasn't even a fan of his own people, man.
Yeah. He killed more than Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. So even like leaders like Gandhi or the Empire of Japan.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea is like, hey, listen, we got to get all these white people out. It's going to be a Pan-Asian coalition and stuff. I'm like, okay, listen, by the way, China, I'm going to need that Manchuria. All right.
Exactly.
I'm going to need that.
I'm going to need to rape Nanking.
Yeah, Nanking, Singapore, and all this other stuff. I'm going to need all that stuff where it's kind of like, and because Asia really got fucked over technology-wise. Like, anybody's ever played Sid Meier's Civilization games?
Oh, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so it's basically you start off like right when a civilization starts agriculture.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And there's different civilizations that you can be, right? Which is kind of cool. You're like, well, I want to see if the Aztecs, if they can make it to the space age or something,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
And there's different levels and stuff. And so what's weird, it's very intricate, and it's very nerdy, it's very boring, but you could be having like 4 or 5 cities and you're having a great economy and everybody's great. They're learning about art and science and things are going great. Unfortunately, the guy 2 countries over just discovered gunpowder.
Oh yeah. Here we go.
Guess what? He needs some of your shit. So you're gonna have to build up your military and your defenses. Now they took this out of the game, but back like Civ 3, one of the options of governments that you could use was slavery.
Oh shit.
Right?
Yep.
Which is fucked.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're trying to defend yourself from other countries and you need to build up things like walls and structures really quickly,
Yep.
that's one of the things that you're going to use. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it, but the whole thing is the more I kept playing this, where I'm like, you could be like in some type of weird earth or something like that, but if you don't have any iron in your country and you can't trade it with anybody else, you're going to have to, you're going to need that. So I think the rest of the world, they discovered longer reaching ships. Their shipbuilding was way better. Yeah. Like in Europe, that was one of the they've colonizers. Yes, because they were able to do it. If other countries were able to add ships, they can go that distance. There's a good chance they might have done that. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it's like, I forgot. It just, you learn this and you're like, people are gross. That's basically what it comes down to. Yeah. So everything about, if you look at the thing about supernova in the East, you're like, back, especially in that part of time, nationalism was such a powerful tool to motivate your people. Why wouldn't you use that tool? Because remember that 15 years or 20 years prior to that, all of Europe was almost completely devastated with World War I, right? Like they saw their whole entire life get completely blown away. Yeah. Everything about the world, like watch the Lord of the Rings, guys. It's always about how the old world ends and the new world begins and stuff, and how are they going to do it. That was, and Tolkien fought in World War I. And that's where he put a lot of his energy.
So did Hitler. These guys saw that's still the more celebrated war in Europe because it was that horrific. In World War II.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that was more. It went on longer, didn't it? Or I think because World War II officially
the same, 1914 to 18, I believe. That's about 4 years. Technically, World War II was 39 to 45. Okay, but it was just they weren't ready for the technology. You had people running horses into tanks, and just thousands of people dying over a mile or less of land. I mean, especially along the French-German border. And
most of things like barbed wire that gets in your way. There was a simple thing like that, which they had to invent tanks to get over the barbed wire. Exactly. Because it was all in artillery and all this.
I was going to say, we weren't ready for machine guns. Guys were still marching, marching towards it. Yep. Because you got to remember, we're within 50 years of the Civil War. And think of what warfare was back then. Yeah. And so a lot of people were like, well, this is still warfare. We march. No, you don't. You're getting mowed down.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, I don't think we should march, sir. Like, what are you, a pussy?
Yeah, exactly.
This is how your grandfather fought. Exactly. This is how your great grandfather fought. Yeah. This is how men fight. French are like, no, fuck that. We're France. We'll do whatever the fuck we want. We're the badasses here, and we also badasses here. Okay. We also clown, huh? Hey, listen, don't remember the book Napoleon. Okay, we beat the shit out of the people before. Huh? We could do it again.
I think that's a good way for us to come close to finishing up. Do you got any last words? We're in an hour already.
I know. It's crazy.
I know. I love
this. Happens every time that we speak and stuff. So, you want to continue this on the Disjointed podcast?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah,
okay. We can do that. Yeah. So, I will say lastly, if you guys go to disjointedpod.com, that is my website where you can find the links to. I mean, it's hosted on Spreaker, but I'm on iTunes, on Google Cast, on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, all these other things. I've got so many URLs leading to the same website. Okay. So there's Disjointed Pod. That's the main one, right? And then I have denvercomedy.org and .net. Okay. All right. And I wanted a .com, but I think the Bovine Theater, they own that.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go to fdenvercomedy.com, that takes you to Disjointed because nobody else bought it, and I'm like, fuck it, let's do it.
That's a good one to own.
Let's see what I. No, there's a couple. I'm not that serious, guys. So there's dyslexicfuttbuckers.com, and there's that one. Or if you go to olympicfreestylebuttfucking.com,
wow,
that one.
I don't know what you're going to see there.
It'll still go to Disjointed Pod. But the whole idea is the fact that I own olympicfreestylebuttfucking.com. So if that ever becomes a sport, and why shouldn't it be?
Hey, if they can do bowling, why not?
Exactly. So what? Curling's a sport, but you're not going to have Olympic freestyle. I don't know. It just sounds really funny.
That is awesome.
So that goes to that, and so I hope to find you guys over there. And guys, I'm going to send as many people over to this, even though I'm not really on Facebook anymore. But
yeah, I'm just doing mine on Facebook and Twitter so far. Mine is in the embryonic stages, as you heard earlier. David's at 292. I guess I don't know. I'm going to be 293 when we continue this. Mm-hmm. So David's closing on 300. Which honestly, that's a big deal.
It's kind of weird. Like it's not a hobby anymore, which is why I had to buy this thing. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah, I wish I could. Like I said, I should take a picture of it and put it on when I get the
go ahead.
stuff.
And then this is my podcast flex where I'm like looking at my card and I'm like,
we'll
I just got out this thing like doing the duck lips and stuff. So,
but so we'll end this one and go to the next one, or just once again, this is David Germain. I had a lot of fun. We put out in about an hour. We talked about a lot of stuff, not just comedy. So that was cool. And David, I love talking to David because I'm a history guy. He's a history guy, and David's very smart. Almost all the stop it. He's shaking his head. Tell him to stop. But this has been John Corelli, another comic, another podcast, and I've had a great time with David, and I guess we'll just kind of thread into yours now.
All right.